world is, of course, by telephone. It's so vital to our whole way of life, both at home and in business, that it has to work all the time. That's why British Telecom and the telecom companies in Europe, the States, the Far East, everywhere else, will always be judged by perfection. As you know better than I do, people expect their calls to get through every time and always to the right number. They want directory inquiries to answer immediately, all phone faults fixed at once, new equipment installed right away, and every payphone has to work. Oh boy, it's a lot to expect. And when it doesn't happen, you get criticised. So how good is British Telecom? How does it compare with the world's top telecom companies? Ian Vallance has set BT the goal of becoming the #1 telecom company in the world, which is quite a target. So how close to this goal is BT? Has it yet got even within striking distance? To try and find out, we're going to take you around the world, around Whicker's telecom world, to see how BT compares with the top competition. We'll be visiting the continent, where the big telephone companies like French Telecom and the German Bundespost are taking a deep breath and preparing to become much more commercially minded, much more competitive in a Europe that'll soon be a single market. We'll also be here in the States, where if you ask for a phone to be installed and they say, when do you want it? They don't just mean, what day do you want it? They mean, what time of that day do you want it? We're not only going to travel around the world, we're going to travel around British Telecom, meeting some of the people who are making things happen. That's just to give you a flavour of what we're about. We have a big project here, and it'll take several reports. So why does British Telecom think all this is necessary? Who better to answer to you than Ian Vallance? Why do you believe it's important for BT that one should compare these systems?
Well, it's extremely important. I think partly, if you look backwards, because as an organisation with a monopoly in the UK, we've always tended to be introspective, to look internally at what we're about, perhaps to judge ourselves as we were in the previous year, but not to set ourselves world standards. Now, with the markets that we're in becoming global markets, we've got to set our sights as being a world leader. And to do that, you've got to look at what the best of the rest of the world is, and what the worst of the rest of the world is as well, so that you can get yourself in perspective. So it's important for our people to think broad, to think internationally, and see what's going on elsewhere.
Like here in Japan, where everything is done with great precision and enormous attention to detail. For example, the train for which I'm waiting will arrive exactly on time, and what's more, the carriage in which I'm travelling, number 11, will stop exactly here. Number 11. Well, that couldn't be more exact, could it? But where, I hear you ask, does the telephone come in? Well, it's on the train, isn't it? 20 years ago, these bullet trains were the first trains in the world to have onboard payphones in the buffet car. This is the latest version for these first-class compartments. This is Kyoto, the ancient capital, and today the heart of its ancient tradition, where even the telephone boxes have a certain style. It's my experience in Japan that once you're out of the mainstream, once you're away from the cities, you might as well be on Mars. You don't understand the language, you don't know the road signs, nobody knows where you're going or how you're going to get there, and nobody knows how to help you. You feel very foreign indeed. Arigato. It's all a question of communication. Yet luckily there is the old familiar lifeline, tastefully disguised. From here, using the same international code, I can call anyone I want to, anywhere in the world. International phone services are like airlines. They need offices where they're based and where they're going. I'm heading for the Ark Mori building, owned by Professor Mori, second richest man in the world, no less. And up on the 30th floor, looking over Tokyo, the offices of British Telecom. So what's the purpose, Mike, of this rather splendid BT office? What do you do here?
Well, the office was set up originally to support the corporate needs of all of British Telecom, all its divisions and subsidiaries. Our principal objectives here are to maintain contact with our equivalents in Japan, Nippon Telephone and Telegraph.
Mike Jones opened BT's Tokyo office in 1984, and Steve Phillips looks after city business products.
Most big Japanese companies who have extensive international operations tend to use London as a hub for their communications with their offices in Europe, Africa, and parts of the Middle East as well.
So why London? Why not Paris or Frankfurt?
Well, historically, British Telecom International, I think it's fair to say, was the only European carrier which was flexible enough to look after the very complex needs of Japanese companies operating in our hemisphere. That situation is now changing very, very quickly. Our friends in France and Germany are becoming more competitive and certainly more interested in this type of business. And of course we have homegrown competition in the United Kingdom itself.
Kokusai Securities is the second major Japanese company to choose British Telecom to supply their dealer system. So the obvious question for Steve was, why did they do that?
Well, they obviously had a very long and lengthy process before they bought our equipment. They compared us to a major competitor here, Hitachi, who actually have 37% of the market here. And there was many factors. Probably one of the major ones was our development of kanji characters. Also the combination of key consoles plus touch screen. Some dealers like touch screen, some dealers prefer key. We were able to offer a tailor-made system.
Now, what about quality control? You see, this is often regarded as Japanese speciality, isn't it? In almost every type of engineering.
It certainly is, yes. It's a god here, I suppose you could say. And also a total commitment. That is very noticeable in the Japanese ethic, is the total commitment to the company, the product, and the customer.
You've been here a year, Steve. Are you adopting the Japanese work ethic here? Or were you working harder anyway?
If Mr. Vance is watching, without a shadow of doubt.
Assuming he's not watching.
Yes, you have to. There is no alternative. If your colleagues are working and the need is there, then you have to do it.
Now, Japan's equivalent of BT is NTT. What are they up to these days?
Well, they're in roughly the same situation, I think, as ourselves. They run a network which is twice as big as British Telecom's, but at the same time, Japan, of course, is more than twice the size of UK in terms of population. They too are moving towards digitalizing their network. I think at the moment they're a trifle behind us, but in typical Japanese fashion, they're introducing new technology now at a very, very fast rate. So they're moving ahead towards digitalizing the total Japanese network in much the same way as British Telecom is doing the same in UK.
And like Britain, the Japanese have card phones, but I gather they're card phones with a difference.
They are. They're different specification than ours, a different material. I've got some here in my pocket, if you'd like to see some. I think the main difference between those and the ones we have in Britain are that these are very, very colourful. The first two or three here, this is a castle in Shikoku, one of the big southern islands in Japan. And these two here are actually produced by NTT for sale to the public. And this one, again, you can see is plain advertising. This is sponsored by a company which gives it away to customers. And this is one you might be quite interested in. We've had this one done for you for your visit.
Ah, yes, that's a premium card, obviously. In just a couple of generations, Japan has changed from an isolated agricultural society into this towering industrial nation. Wherever you go, the old contrasts with the new. And wherever you go, you'll find payphones. And payphones, of course, are the most public face of any telecom company. Now I've got this glamorous new card,
Yes.
Mike. You better show me how I spend it.
Right, it's very simple. Just take it, lift up the receiver, pop it in the slot, and then you get a display showing how many units you've got unused.
50 units, yes.
New card, and then just simply punch the number. When you've finished, put it back, and a tone reminds you to pick up your card.
Now I see this machine has got takes money as well as cards. That's pretty
right,
unusual,
yes.
isn't it?
Not here. There's no vandalism problem or theft problem, so the concept of combining a cash and card phone doesn't matter here. In fact, in Japan, it's not unusual to see large dispensers selling alcoholic drinks, whiskey, beer, everything.
You mean to say in this great overcrowded nation, this of what, 120 million people, that there's no vandalism of phone boxes?
Not that I've ever seen, anyway. There's a little graffiti occasionally, and that's about all.
Now, wherever I go, I see these tubby little phone boxes on shop counters everywhere, all in licorice all-sort colours. And the Japanese find them irresistible, it seems. I mean, they can't walk past a phone without using it.
Well, they are there. They're ubiquitous, so everybody can use one when they want to. You see them a lot in shops, I think. They're a courtesy to customers.
It's not like getting into Newgate Street.
Not quite, no.
When you do get back there, Mike, what are you going to miss from Japan?
Well, several aspects of Japanese life, which I do enjoy now. But I think most of it really is to do with the office situation, working environment. All Japanese, whether they work for Japanese companies or us, have a tremendous sense of commitment, of duty. And there's a requirement for total quality. If something goes wrong here, it's got to be fixed immediately, not tomorrow, but today. And that doesn't matter whether it's a piece of hardware, a machine, or whether it's an inquiry about a service or some business that you're doing with a company. They ask a question, they expect it to be answered immediately.
And done.
And it is usually, yes.
You'll miss the work ethic. Anything else?
The sense of service here, the politeness by people on the street and in public areas is very impressive, very nice to live with. Of course.
It's hard not to be impressed by the Japanese, so it seems sensible to go to the top of our pile to find out what is it that distinguishes the Japanese.
Very early on the quality movement, quality in everything that they do, and of course that is something now that throughout BT, our total quality management program, is running forward. And that's based, at the end of the day, on a Japanese model. On the other hand, there are a number of things that the Japanese now have, which we've done first. And if you take optical fibers, for example, we were first in that market, one of the very first, particularly in the monomode equipment. That's the most modern optical fibers. If you take our computing systems, our customer service systems, I think those are probably more advanced than you'll find amongst the Japanese. So one shouldn't take too defensive a line with the Japanese. They're extremely good. There are a lot of things that we can learn from them, but there are things that we can do better.
The Japanese seem ever more complex, fascinating and successful. So it's gratifying to know that they're still knocking off some of our inventions, even a venerable national monument.